Hey everyone, ready to dive in? Today we're tackling Zeno of Citium and how this ancient Greek philosopher can offer some surprisingly relevant wisdom for, well, right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how these ideas, from ancient Greece still resonate in our modern world.
Right, like opening a philosophical time capsule. So who was this Zeno guy? What's the deal with him?
Okay, so picture ancient Athens, right? Bustling marketplace, philosophers debating. It's like the intellectual heart of the world. And that's where Zeno steps onto the scene around 300 BCE, founding the Stoic school.
Wow, founding an entire school of thought. That's pretty impressive.
He was very influential. Although, and this is interesting, we don't actually have any of his original writings.
Oh, wow. So how do we even know what he thought?
Good question. We mostly know about Zeno's teachings through his followers, people like Epictetus and Seneca. It's kind of like trying to recreate a chef's famous dish based on descriptions from people who tasted it because the actual recipe is lost.
That makes it even more intriguing. We're getting Zeno's wisdom secondhand? Exactly. But don't underestimate it. Even though those original texts are gone, Zeno's ideas are, well, they're potent. We know he was initially drawn to the Cynics.
The Cynics, those were the folks who, rejected all social norms, right?
Yeah, they were known for a pretty radical rejection of societal norms. But Zeno, he took a different path.
Instead of rejecting society, he wanted to find a way to thrive within it.
Exactly. He thought you could be virtuous without renouncing the world entirely.
Hmm.
Like, think of it this way. You can appreciate the flavors of a dish, but add your own twist, make it your own. That's kind of like Stoicism.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so what were some of the key ingredients in Zeno's philosophical recipe?
Well, one of the core principles is this idea of living in harmony with nature.
Okay, so not necessarily everyone becoming park rangers, right? More like finding a way to align yourself with the natural order of things.
You got it. The Stoics believed in a divine, rational order governing the universe. They called it the Logos.
The logos. Okay, so less about literally hugging trees, more about aligning your actions with this universal flow, in a way. Tell me more about this logos idea.
It's like recognizing there's a larger design, something bigger than just us. Living in harmony with the Logos is about aligning your actions and choices with that natural order, striving to understand your place in the grand scheme of things.
It almost sounds like surrendering to a higher intelligence, but not in a passive way.
Exactly. It's about recognizing what you can and cannot control. And that leads us to another big thing in Stoicism, apatheia.
Apatheia. That sounds kind of intimidating. Like we're all supposed to become these emotionless robots.
Not at all. It's not about denying your emotions, more like achieving this inner calm. Imagine an athlete training their mental game to perform under pressure. It's like mental fitness training for life.
Okay, so it's about being the eye of the hurricane, not getting swept away by every emotional gust, right? Makes sense, especially these days.
Absolutely. Think about it. Someone cuts you off in traffic, right? A Stoic wouldn't get all enraged. They'd recognize it's not really in their control and focus on their own response. That's apatheia in action.
Okay, that's a good example. How do we learn to cultivate that? Is it all mountaintop meditation?
Actually, while meditation can help, Stoicism is pretty practical. And a big part of that is understanding this thing called the Stoic dichotomy of control.
The Stoic dichotomy of control. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? But I bet Zeno wasn't pitching self-help books, so break down what's this dichotomy all about?
It's really pretty simple at its core. The Stoics believe we should really focus our energy on what we can actually control. Like our thoughts, actions, how we react to things.
Okay, so far so good.
But anything else, like what other people do, world events, even our health to a point, those are outside our direct control. We can influence things, but not directly control them.
So it's about focusing on your own little sphere rather than trying to control the uncontrollable.
Exactly. It's a little like, imagine a dog tied to a cart, right?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
That dog, it can choose to walk along willingly or fight and get dragged through the mud. But the cart's still going where it's going.
I'm liking this analogy. So we're the dog, life's the cart, and Zeno's saying, don't be that dog getting all muddied up for no reason.
Exactly. It's when we accept what we can't control that we actually find more freedom and some peace of mind. We can focus on responding well, not on things we can't change.
It's about choosing to walk, not being dragged. Okay, that's pretty profound when you think about it. But Zeno wasn't just out there on his own, right? Weren't there other big philosophical schools of thought back then?
Oh, yeah. Ancient Athens was like a hotbed of philosophical debate, like a battle royale of ideas.
I'm picturing philosophers throwing scrolls at each other now. So who are some of Zeno's biggest rivals in this big philosophical showdown?
One big one was the Epicureans. They
Oh.
followed a philosopher named, well, Epicurus, and they were all about pleasure.
Okay, pleasure, I can get behind that. Eat, drink, and be merry, right? Why wasn't Zeno on board with that philosophy?
Well, it wasn't that the Stoics were against pleasure, really. It's more that they saw it as a side effect of living a good life, not the goal.
Ah, so making pleasure the main goal, that's maybe setting yourself up for disappointment.
Right. Because what happens when that pleasure goes away?
Yeah.
Or you can't get it, you're stuck,
Mhm.
Zeno thought true fulfillment. That came from virtue, wisdom, justice, things like that.
So it's more about aligning yourself with those principles, and then maybe the good feelings, they just kind of follow. Like you can't force happiness, but you can do things that often lead to it, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
Another group Zeno was contending with was the Platonists, followers of Plato.
Right. Plato, the forms, all that.
Exactly. And while both the Stoics and the Platonists believed in a rational order to the universe, how they thought we could understand that order, that's where they differed.
So how did their approaches differ?
Well, Plato, he was all about this realm of perfect forms, like blueprints of reality existing beyond our world. He thought we could access knowledge of these forms through reason and contemplation.
Okay, so like thinking your way to the truth.
Yeah, exactly. But the Stoics, while they valued reason, they were much more grounded in the here and now. To them, living virtuously was about actually engaging with the world, using reason to make choices that lined up with the logos, that universal order we talked about.
So less about abstract thinking and more about taking action, living by those principles.
Exactly. Now, I know this is all ancient stuff, could seem a bit removed from our lives today,
Yeah,
right?
I see that.
But the thing is, Stoicism, it's really about building inner strength and resilience, which, let's face it, we need those qualities now more than ever, right?
It's like Stoicism is a framework for dealing with the chaos of, well, being alive, no matter what century you're in.
You got to think about it. You're scrolling through social media, right? And you see someone totally bashing, like your favorite band.
Happens all the time.
Right. Now, you could get sucked into that, spend all your energy defending your music taste.
Been there.
But a Stoic, they'd probably recognize that, hey, this is kind of out of their control. They might even use a Stoic practice called, this is interesting, negative visualization.
Negative visualization.
Ugh.
Okay, that sounds a little, well, negative.
It's not about being a downer, actually. It's more like a mental exercise.
Yeah.
You imagine the worst case scenario.
Like my favorite band breaks up, my record collection disappears.
Right. And by contemplating that, you actually appreciate what you have even more
Yeah.
right now. And you realize even if the worst happened, you'd get through it. It's about accepting that challenges are part of life, and you can face them, with resilience.
So it's a way of taking back control, not by changing what happens, but by changing how you react to it.
That's it. That's the core of Stoicism. And the best part is you don't have to become some kind of Stoic master to get something out of it. It's more about taking what works for you.
Finding those tools that help you navigate life, whether it's from Stoicism or any other philosophy that resonates, right?
Exactly. It's like we're all on this journey of trying to live well, and these philosophies, they offer guideposts.
I love that guidepost. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Zeno and Stoicism, what's one big takeaway you hope our listeners will carry with them?
That's a good question. I think it's that we always have a choice in how we react to what life throws at us. We can let things drag us down, or we can face them head on with resilience.
And maybe by trying out some of these Stoic principles, we can find a little more peace, a little more joy, and a lot more resilience along the way. So, next time things get tough, channel your inner Zeno, take a breath, and ask yourself, how can I respond to this in a way that empowers me? You might surprise yourself with the strength you find. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.